Well, hello, I'm Pastor Chad Colmeyer from Atonement Lutheran Church, and I'm here with Christine Ruth, a pastor and therapist in the Boulder area, Alan Johnson, a retired pastor and member at Atonement, and Marty McMain, also retired pastor and member at Atonement. The Courageous Conversations ministry team has put together this brief pandemic scenario in hopes that the tools that are illustrated here might be helpful in your daily life as you live in and through your Christian call. We hope that it helps you bring forward your best self that models Jesus's openness, love, and forbearance. Today, we are talking about anger. It's a time when emotions are running high, and especially in this time of COVID-19 and our context. So we're going to talk a little bit about it and its expression in ourselves. Or if you've not felt this in yourself, to hear some perspective on where that may be coming from in others. Now, Christians can be uncomfortable with anger. Think even that it's a sin and it should just be buried or gone away with, but that's not necessarily true. We know that Jesus had that emotion, prophets did. It's a feeling, nothing inherently wrong with it. So we're encouraging us to explore a little bit more this feeling of anger and not just simply avoid it during this time.
Yes, thank you, Pastor Chad. It's, as you're indicating, it's for some of us that are Christian, it's very uncomfortable to feel anger, to have anger. Sometimes boundaries that we have seem to be broken, or the needs that we actually have are not being met. And there are many reasons why anger comes up, and especially now dealing globally around the pandemic in terms of our health, but also the systemic racism. And both of these issues are just causing anger for some different reasons to emerge. For instance, think about some of the kids in our families that are now, they're not having sleepovers. They haven't been with their friend in quite a long time. The anger also is, there's something that is being lost. There's something that's, that they really wanted to have happen, but it's not. And most of us are dealing with uncertainty in both of these pandemics in many ways, in terms of how it's going to unfold and what's going to come. So what do we actually do, and what causes some of that anger in this particular context that we're all living in? And I think there's some underlying reasons for explaining that.
For me, I have always had difficulty expressing anger and being around people expressing anger. And I had to do a lot of work around that when I was young, finding out what's underneath it. And one thing I learned, besides what's been mentioned already, that it's just a feeling. It's a feeling that's been given us by God to express something important to us. And so when I learned that anger is really about something that's important to us, it helped me. Oh, okay. I can see that something's going on here. But as a child, when anger was expressed in my home, it was a dangerous thing. So I had to learn about that, and there's different ways to express it. And during COVID, if we're finding ourselves irritated or frustrated or being sharp with someone, or that's happening in our family, or someone we know is erupting, it may be good for us to take a breath. We don't have to be afraid. We just have to say, I wonder what's going on under there. We're not always conscious that our anger is about a boundary violation or a need not being met. So the more we could bring it to consciousness, the more it might help us. Right now we're all experiencing a lot of helplessness and a lot of needs that normally would have been met in a certain way are not being able to. So of course, there's a lot happening underneath the surface there. There's helplessness, lack of control, there's fear, there's grief. We have lost a lot. Some of our family members have been ill. Some may have died, or friends. We don't have the connections we're used to. So I think under a lot of this pent-up emotion that bursts out sometimes for us is grief. And luckily for us, Christine Ruth, who is with us, that's one of her specialties in her ministry of counseling. So Christine, help us understand the relationship between anger and grieving.
Yeah, I'm sure many of you have maybe noticed there's a lot of volatility, whether on the Nextdoor app in your neighborhood, or perhaps on your Facebook account, or perhaps in your own family. One of the things we've noticed as, grief researchers is that when we go through times in our societal change, where there's a lot of loss or shifting, we all go through the stages of grief. So no matter whether the change is positive or negative, we still go through the stages of grief. And one of those stages is anger, right? So there might be shock. We've talked about going through COVID. At first, there was a lot of shock. Is this really happening? And then there was bargaining. Do we have to really respond to this? But many of us then go through times of anger and feelings of helplessness, like, whose fault is this, right? And so we try to direct our anger somewhere. We might direct it at people who aren't wearing masks, or we might direct it at people who are wearing masks, or we might direct it at our spouse, right? The old, you're mad at your boss, you come home and you kick the dog, right? It can be really easy during these times to misdirect our anger because we feel helpless. And there's a natural propensity when we feel helpless or when we feel out of control to want to find a source of blame, right? Whose fault is this? We might even feel angry at God. How can God be allowing this to happen? How can God be allowing, the riots and the racial unrest to come right on top of COVID? Many people are saying it's just too much. And so when we feel all those feelings of anger, one of the things that we can really do is to be gentle to ourselves and to recognize that it's so normal when we've gone through a huge season of loss to feel anger and to want to blame someone for this. It gives us a feeling of control, right? We have lost our schedules. We've lost our routines. Many of us have lost our jobs. We've lost our access to social contact. Many of our kids have lost their graduations. They've lost their vacation plans. That maybe they were going to Disney, they were going to the beach. All of that is sitting with us, right? So to acknowledge that it's so easy for me, even, I'm a kind of gentle, peace-loving person, but I'm finding myself being a lot angrier these days. So I have to keep stopping myself and saying, okay, Christine, what's happening inside of you? The anger, it's boiling in my belly. And then I force myself to answer the question, you know what? I'm angry because at the root of it, I'm afraid that blank, right? What is the fear? Or I'm angry because at the root of it, my need for connection isn't being met. And so how can I go out and meet that need? So part of the work of this is to recognize that anger is our first defense. It's our alarm system that goes off that says something is wrong. You need to pay attention. And then the next question is, I'm angry because underneath that, I'm feeling afraid. I'm feeling, I'm feeling desperate. I'm feeling needy. And to acknowledge some of those more vulnerable emotions that feel uncomfortable and messy, and then to take action, right, in our anger, to allow our anger not to just sit there ruminating or turning inward on us. When we turn our anger inward, it actually can cause depression, anxiety, restlessness. But instead, what is anger inviting me to do right now? How can I take action for meeting my needs, for finding community, and how can I mourn my losses? I've gone through so many losses. How can I mourn them, which is to express them? Who can I talk to that's a safe space where I can express my losses, let them know what it feels like, and then allow, whether it's God, if God's comforting to you, or draw on the spiritual resources that we have all around us, like nature, companionship, to help ground us and to just express, yeah, this is tough. And it hurts, and we need to be gentle to ourselves and practice extra self-care so that we don't explode on people on Facebook or walk up to the kids at the park and scream at them for not wearing their masks, or all the other things that I've been tempted to do over the last couple of months. So, other thoughts, Pastor Chad? Anyone else?
Very helpful. Very helpful. Thank you. Always stopping, take a deep breath, see if we can see what fear and grief is underneath it, and take care of ourselves. Be gentle with ourselves and with one another as much as we can.
Well, I was thinking about, to blame others. Where can I place, though, the responsibility for the fact that it's not going according to my plan? And so we're going to blame whatever it might be, but so many of us don't have a mental flexibility to be able to allow, oh, there is change. It is okay. And change is very, very, very difficult. And huge amount of change is now happening in our life as well as our livelihood. And so with that, we don't know where to blame that. And sometimes we say we put it inside or when we attack somebody outside. But naming that, I think, would be really helpful so that that emotion can be cleansing in some way, not destroying or sort of giving to a chokehold or whatever it might be. So thank you for that. It's very helpful.
Yeah, good. I appreciate the reminder, to be attentive to the emotion and not just bury it, sort of lean in. The reminder that we're not the only one experiencing this. I've heard you say this a lot, Christine. So many are doing this. You're not feeling this alone. And then to find the safe spaces to share those emotions, whether that's our spiritual resources or a good friend, listening ear, or professional help too. Well, I do hope that this helps you bring forward your best self during this time, your honest self during this time, as we seek to lean in with openness, love, and forbearance in our Christian faith. Thank you to the three of you for joining me for this.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Pastor Chad.
You're welcome.